I've drafted a lot of Damien Pierce. I've drafted a lot of James Conner. And I am worried, ladies and gentlemen, because after doing this research, going through and looking at these bad teams and what kind of running back production we can expect and what a realistic ceiling is for a player that's in a piss poor offense, started to realize maybe they don't have the actual upside that we're looking for. I'm going to talk about exactly what we should expect this next season and why I am worried. But before we get into it, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And of course, if you play fantasy football and want to get all of my rankings for this upcoming season, want to get all of our premium content, you can find that on flockfantasy.com. Over there on flockfantasy.com, when you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you are going to get 30% off any subscription. And yours truly will go through and make a podcast about your dynasty team. But let's go through and let's dive into this. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go through and look at bad teams, right? Like teams that are at the very bottom of the NFL standings. And historically speaking, what do their running backs do? So I took the 5 worst teams every year over the past decade in the NFL. And let's just briefly go by this year by year and look at their starting running back and look at the output we had. 2022, this past season, the worst team in the NFL, the Chicago Bears. After that, you had Houston, then Arizona, then the Colts, and the Los Angeles Rams. And with these running backs, the best finish that you had was James Conner as the running back 10 from a points per game perspective. Now, keep in mind, a little bit skewed. James Conner didn't play the entire season. And the worst finish that you had was Cam Akers, running back 39 from a points per game perspective. I do want to point out here that you have some pretty damn good running backs, right? I mean, Jonathan Taylor, he was being drafted as the literal running back 1 in fantasy last year. He was being drafted at pick 1, pick 2, the latest pick 3. And yep, because the Colts were this bad, even if you account for his injury, this is a points per game perspective, he's down there as the running back 18. The year prior, 2021, James Robinson was the lead back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, running back 21 from a per game perspective. You had DeAndre Swift in the Lions, running back 10, not too bad. Michael Carter with the Jets, running back 35. Saquon Barkley, okay, so very similar to Jonathan Taylor, right? I mean, you have an elite level running back in an offense that is very disappointing. What does Barkley do? He's the running back 34 from a points per game perspective. Now, yes, coming off the torn ACL, yes, dealt with another injury, but it's a points per game perspective. Saquon Barkley, the running back 34. And then you have the Texans, Rex Burkhead, running back 52. Now, going to 2020, James Robinson is actually one of the highest finishers we have seen from a bottom 5 team over the past decade, where James Robinson was the running back 7 from a points per game perspective. We'll get to this in just 1 second. But we also have Frank Gore, running back 47 for the Jets. David Johnson, running back 21. Todd Gurley, running back 29. Miles Sanders, running back 23. So we have some pretty damn good running backs there. None of them produce. 2019, we have Joe Mixon. Okay, yeah, Joe Mixon, he's a running back 1, right? Nope, not with the Cincinnati Bengals in 2019. Running back 20 from a points per game perspective. Commanders and Darius Geis, running back 29. Lions and Kerryon Johnson, running back 32. Saquon Barkley and the Giants. This is the other high finisher that we have outside of James Robinson. James Robinson, running back 7. Saquon Barkley was running back 7. We'll dive into him a little bit more in depth later on. And Patrick Laird for the Dolphins, running back 62. Next year, David Johnson, 11, Matt Breida, 30, Isaiah Crowell, 33, Marshawn Lynch, 20, Peyton Barber, 42. Year after that, you have 16, 39, 28, 21, 57. Year after that, you have 23, 12, 42, 9, 24. Year after that, 45, 23, 10, 24, 28, 65, 47, 49, 39, 23, 18, 32, 31, 29, 23. So overall, the big takeaway that I want to have here is you can have a top 24 running back from a piss poor team. Like, you can be the worst team in the NFL and you can put out a top 24 running back in fantasy. But at the end of the day, does a top 24 running back win you your league? Nope, it doesn't come close to it. Now, of course, if you draft that guy, say like in an underdog draft in round 14, 15, like if last year in your underdog draft, you got Jerick McKinnon round 16 and he's the top 24 guy, he makes a massive difference, right? But in a regular fantasy football league where you're going through and submitting your starting lineup each and every week, where you only start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex, a top 24 RB isn't really going to move the needle. If you want to find a league-winning option, you need someone inside the top 6. You need a high-end running back 1 in fantasy. And out of the 50 teams that we looked at over the past decade, there was not a single one that had a running back inside the top 6. You had a total of 0. Now, the 2 guys that were able to actually get close to this, right? Saquon Barkley, James Robinson, both finished as the running back 7. Saquon Barkley in 2019, where if you're going to pull this up, the big thing I want to point out with Saquon Barkley is this is a profile where he goes out there and he not only dominates from a market share perspective, but also Saquon Barkley is heavily involved as a pass catcher. Now, if we go over and look at James Robinson at the same time, you're going to see a very similar situation where James Robinson in 2020 has to be the number 1 bell cow in the NFL from a market share perspective. If you were looking at James Robinson, his carries per game as a percentage of his team's overall offense and his targets per game in the form of his target share in his own offense, yeah, James Robinson is an outright bell cow, and he's able to overcome this. Now, does this mean we should expect we get the same thing from every running back? No, of course not. These were 2 guys out of a list of 50 teams that were able to be decent for you in fantasy. Saquon Barkley in 2019 still wasn't great. It's not like he had a massive win rate. Remember, in 2019, Saquon Barkley was the number 1 overall pick in fantasy drafts. So if anything, him finishing as the running back 7 was disappointing. I'd say James Robinson throughout this entire list was the only actual league-winning running back that we saw. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. Let me know if you think that's an incorrect assumption. I would say out of this list, James Robinson was the only league-winning running back we had, and that's when he finished as the running back 7 in 2020. Keep in mind, he's coming in as an undrafted free agent. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to go over and look at what Las Vegas sportsbooks are telling us, right? Because I like to sit here and act like I know everything, blah, blah, blah. In reality, compared to these Vegas sportsbooks, I am the dumbest person you could ever talk to. I have 2 brain cells firing off at the same time if I'm lucky, whereas these Vegas sportsbooks have access to every little data point on the internet. They have every data point that we don't have access to. They have algorithms. They have big money from people that are smarter than me going through and betting on these lines. So Vegas lines, they are going to be much better at predicting NFL records this next season than I am. And if you're looking at what they're telling us right now, first thing I want to point out is the Arizona Cardinals are going to be horrendous. You're kind of already seeing the Arizona Cardinals go through and decide to punt this next season, right? Where, they're going through and they are trading away their first-round pick to go get the first-round pick for the Houston Texans. Someone we'll talk about in just 1 second. It's hilarious what Houston did. And on top of this, while they couldn't get much for DeAndre Hopkins, instead of holding out and trying to get a day 3 pick, they're like, okay, no, yeah, we don't really care for Hopkins. We don't care to win this year. Let's go ahead and let's just cut DeAndre Hopkins off of our team. Let's see if we can save any money. Let's just go ahead and lose as many games as possible this next year. And yeah, this has resulted in the Arizona Cardinals having a win total of either 4.5 games or 5 games, almost guaranteeing that they have one of the worst teams in the NFL. Now, yes, they were very bad last year, and James Conner was the running back 10 from a points per game perspective, which is why, honestly, if we're looking at underdog drafts right now, I have gone through and I've drafted some James Conner, right? It's all about the price point that you are taking that player at. Whereas on Underdog Fantasy, it's half PPR. James Conner's currently going as the running back 27. He's going currently behind Quentin Johnston, Brandon Cooks at wide receiver. He's going currently behind Darren Waller at tight end. And you are getting James Conner at the beginning of the 8th round. And at this price point, given the fact that James Conner does profile to be a bell cow running back going into this next season, while I don't expect Conner to ever be a top 6 running back from a points per game perspective, I'm fine sitting here and saying, hell, he can be possibly the running back 13, running back 14. And if he is at this price, he is going to be a profitable selection. However, if you're going to go over and look at what you have like in a casual ESPN league, right, where you're only drafting 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex, and you're looking at the ADP of James Conner on ESPN, right now he has an ADP of 54. He is currently going ahead of Christian Watson, Justin Herbert, Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore. He's going ahead of Miles Sanders. He's going ahead of Isaiah Pacheco. He's going ahead of J.K. Dobbins. He's going ahead of DeAndre Swift. He is going ahead of running backs that I could never imagine taking him ahead of. So I think you have to be extremely realistic. If you're drafting in like a casual fantasy football league, should you take James Conner at the 4-5 turn? Hell to the no. The Cardinals are going to be so damn bad that his ceiling will be severely capped this next season, even if he does profile to be a 3-down guy. Now, if you're drafting on Underdog and instead of taking him at the 4-5 turn, you're getting him in round 8, you're sometimes getting him to fall to round 9. Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll take him there. I'm fine drafting him if we're going to get him at that price. So you just have to be realistic with the range of outcomes. And of course, if you want to get into a fantasy football draft today, you know we're streaming every single day Underdog drafts on this channel. And on Underdog Fantasy, they just launched the Puppy 2. It is a $5 buy-in, $1 million prize pool. Looks like 50,000 teams are getting drafted a day. It's absolutely crazy. But of course, if you want to get in a draft with us on the live stream, or if you want to get in a draft just in one of those public tournaments, go sign up, use promo code FLOCK. You're going to get a 100% deposit match up to $100. You'll get my 2023 fantasy football rankings. You'll get a free trial to flockfantasy.com. And on top of that, available in damn near every state. You can find that link in the description. But let's go over and let's look at the next running back that we have here. And honestly, someone else that I've been drafting. So the Houston Texans are supposed to be horrendous. Right now, if you're looking at their totals, anywhere from about 5.5 to 6.5 games for what they're expected to win this next season. So just call it 6 games. They have the second lowest total that you're going to find. And if we're looking at where Dameon Pierce is being drafted, Dameon Pierce, if you're in a casual ESPN league, is going to be going at the end of the 4th round. Dameon Pierce is going after Alvin Kamara in that format. But at the same time, Dameon Pierce is going ahead of guys that I'd rather have, such as Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, the elite level quarterbacks. I mean, he's going ahead of some wide receivers that look like they're great values. So, I mean, honestly, it's very dependent on where you're playing. I hate to keep on going back to this because it looks like Underdog drafters are baking in how bad this Houston Texans team should be this next season, where in Underdog drafts, Dameon Pierce is going as the running back 20. Hell, running back 20, I'm fine going through and betting on you because we've seen time and time again that 3-down players in these bad offenses can easily be top 24 guys. And I think Dameon Pierce could be about the running back 12. So it depends where you're drafting him. If you can get Dameon Pierce round 6, do it. Do not take Dameon Pierce from round 4. Now, our next team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Rashad White. I have not drafted a lot of Rashad White. If you look at Rashad White's efficiency from his rookie season, Rashad White was not a good running back. Let's put it that way. On top of this, if you are looking at Rashad White, this is a running back that, I mean, it doesn't matter the format that you're playing, I'll be able to find a better option. If you're in ESPN right now, the guys going after Rashad White include Kyle Pitts, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Jerry Jeudy. Hell, give me those options. I'll take David Montgomery as well. I'll take Cam Akers, someone we're about to talk about in just 1 second. Whereas if you're looking at Underdog, Rashad White's going as the running back 25. It's a little bit more of a reasonable price tag. I'm still not drafting him there on Underdog, however, because it is a half PPR format on Underdog, where White is primarily just going to be the passing down running back. And in a half PPR league, I probably would rather pivot over to a running back that we can expect to be a little bit better when it comes to the touchdown upside. Because realistically, there's no touchdown upside in Tampa if you're White. So I'd rather have like David Montgomery that you're getting a little later. Now, going over to the Rams and Cam Akers, the Rams are at 6.5 for their total, just like the Bucs. But it looks like everybody's betting on the Bucs under, whereas with the Rams, it's more like minus 110. So you have action on both sides. With Akers, very interesting situation. I would say I'm okay drafting him if we're looking at a casual league. If you're looking at a casual league, you have Cam Akers going off the board at pick 70. He is going after David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Rashad White. Like I said, I probably would rather have Cam Akers over Rashad White, if I'm going to be honest. And if you're playing in that league where you only have to start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a flex, you don't need to move up wide receivers like you do on Underdog. Whereas if we're looking at Cam Akers on Underdog in particular, hell, I mean, I could go through and I could get Isaiah Pacheco instead. Isaiah Pacheco, of course, you have the uncertainty that a running back may be going over to Kansas City, which would be very, very bad. Like, that's the last thing that you want to see. But at least with Pacheco, you could see him having realistic touchdown upside playing in the Kansas City Chiefs offense, where that should be severely capped with the Rams. Now, our last team here, you're going to be looking at the Washington Commanders, 6.5 for their total. With the Commanders, you have Brian Robinson and you have Antonio Gibson. Now, I think the ceiling with both these players will be severely capped. And honestly, I'm not going to be interested in these guys if you are playing in a casual redraft fantasy football league with extremely shallow starting lineups. Because what is the realistic ceiling of what either Gibson or Brian Robinson could turn into this next season? I would say the realistic ceiling for either running back is they turn into high-end running back twos. And if one of them were to turn into the running back 15 from a points per game perspective in a non-best ball format, that's really not going to move the needle for you. That's really not going to be doing much, especially if it's a full PPR where Brian Robinson's really not going to catch the ball. On Underdog, I'd be fine drafting them. There are still other players I prefer in their range. Like I'd rather have Pat Freiermuth over Brian Robinson, for instance. But the difference is on Underdog, since it's best ball, once you get past pick 100, like if you're taking Brian Robinson, pick 106 next to Samaje Perine, if Brian Robinson were to go out there and be a high-end running back too, it actually does move the needle. It actually does turn into a pretty good win rate for your team. So it depends on the format, as always, depends on the price tag. But to recap, I would say just in general, right now, if you're looking at where casual fantasy football drafters are taking James Conner, Damien Pierce, and I'd even throw Rashad White into the mix there, I'd say all those guys are being overdrafted. And I'd say the Commanders play as well because they don't really have the upside that you need in a casual redraft format to move the needle. I'd say all those guys are probably being overdrafted, and I'm fine avoiding them. Now, of course, on Underdog, naturally, I think that the smarter drafters are there, so this is priced in a little bit more, where it does become a more difficult decision. I'm taking Connor where he goes. I'm taking Damien Pierce where he goes. When it comes to Akers, Rashad White, I prefer other options in their range. And Brian Robinson's very dependent on the build, but obviously Underdog's just a different beast with drafters there making very efficient ADP. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, if you enjoyed this, please go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football, and if you want to get access to my rankings, you can do so either with flockfantasy.com or by going and signing up to Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you are going to get a 100% deposit match. You'll get my 2023 fantasy football rankings, and you'll get a free trial to flockfantasy.com, so make sure you take advantage. I think that's all I have for you. Really do appreciate you, and really do hope you have a great day.